Today we're making Irish Stout cake. I'm going to make a trifle. Let's see, I usually do a trifle with the Irish Stout cake. That's going to have a Guinness beer in it. And then I make a cream cheese mousse that will have Bailey's Irish cream in it. And we do it with raspberries as the fruit. So there are a lot of steps, but it's a beautiful and delicious dessert. So right now, just melting some chocolate over the stove. Could do this in a double boiler, but I've just got this in a very heavy bottom saucepan. Creaming brown sugar and butter, 3 cups of brown sugar and 1 cup of unsalted butter. We're making a double batch of the Irish Stout cake, and so that's why we're going with 1 cup butter and 3 cups brown sugar. We're going to just cream that for a while we take another look at our chocolate and make sure it's melting okay. So the chocolate's over a really low heat. In fact, what I'm going to do now, it's not done. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off and then just let the heat in the pan finish melting that chocolate. We've got 8 ounces of unsweetened chocolate that we're using because, again, we're doing a double batch of the Irish Stout cake from Baking Pure and Simple. So that's coming together pretty well. I'm going to speed that up a little bit, and then we've got 4 eggs that we're going to be putting in one at a time. I'm going to speed that up a little bit before I get started putting in the eggs. Okay, so it's always best to crack your eggs into something separate so that you're not cracking them right into the bowl. It's also really important to turn it off when you're adding each thing. You'd never want to, maybe potentially have the beater hit something that you were putting the eggs in with. Ruin your project. Can't have that. So there's one. There's 2. Okay, and here is actually the last one going in. Turn it back on. Let that keep going for a while. I'm going to scrape that down in just a minute. So that's been mixing for a little bit. I am going to scrape that down before I add in 1 cup of molasses, and then we're going to also have 2 teaspoons of vanilla. The molasses and the vanilla are in there. I'm just going to turn that on. And I'll let that mix up for a little while I get some dry ingredients ready. I'm going to sift together 4 cups of flour and 4 teaspoons of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt, and that's baking soda. Also, just for the sake of, we're in a gluten-free house here, so we've been using this King Arthur gluten-free flour, which I really like. This could be made obviously with regular flour, but this one is really good and it goes 1-to-1, so it's a good option if you have gluten-free people who you are baking for. Okay, at this point the molasses is all mixed in with the vanilla, and so now we're going to mix some of this into the melted chocolate, and then we're going to mix the chocolate back into this mixture. The best way to mix the batter into the chocolate is to actually mix a little bit of the chocolate and the batter first, putting the batter into the melted chocolate, and then we'll take this and we'll mix it back into the greater portion of the batter in order to avoid getting little tiny chocolate chips. So that's mixed well enough now. I'm going to mix it back into the rest of the batter. Now I'll mix the chocolate batter in with the regular batter. The chocolate is now all incorporated into the batter, and the next thing I'm going to do is add the Guinness, or any kind of Irish Stout beer, I guess, will do just fine. There it is. A little bit at a time, mixing that in after each addition. Probably do it in 3 additions, and I'm going to add 2 cups of Guinness. Okay, just pouring in a little more Guinness. That's my 2nd addition, so each time about a ½ cup. And then I'm going to stir that up before I put in any more. All the Guinness has now been incorporated, and we have the flour mixture right here all sifted and ready to go. We also have the buttermilk right here. And the next thing we're going to do is stir in a portion of the flour mixture and then stir that in, and then we'll stir in a portion of the buttermilk. We could absolutely do this by hand, but I thought it might go better if I did it in the mixer. So I returned it all to the mixer with the paddle, and we've got the first batch of flour in. You don't want to overmix this though, so we're going to go slow and scrape it down and go easy on the mixing. And then I'm going to add a little bit of buttermilk. I'm going to mix that. And now I'll scrape it down before I add another addition of flour. I added a little more of the flour and I stirred it in a little bit with the spatula before I turned on the mixer. I did that so it wouldn't go flying out, making a big mess. I'm going to add a little more buttermilk in just a minute. Okay, our second addition of the buttermilk. All right, everything's in, all the buttermilk, all the flour, and we're ready to put it into our greased pans. So once again, this was a double batch of the Irish Stout cake. So I've got 2 greased springform pans. I'm going to divide it in there and put it in the oven. Okay, in the oven at 350. Okay, oven check. Wow. Those have been in for just about a half an hour. They're not quite done yet, but I thought we'd take a peek. The timer just went off. I'm going to check these and make sure they're done. They look close. Okay, they're done. I checked them with a wooden toothpick and they are good to go. They did fall just a little bit in the center. I think that is because I tapped them a little. So note to self, can still learn things at all times, no matter how many years you've been doing this. I'm going to make these into a trifle, which is a big bowl filled with mousse, and we're going to make cream cheese mousse and fruit. So we're going to use raspberries, raspberry preserves, and cream cheese mousse and whipped cream, and this Irish Stout cake. And that will be on the next screen.